Basically, what I want to get out of this and what I think would be really useful for everyone is a high-level overview on how to land tech internships, particularly strategies that you can use. It's more of a framework that we want to look at. It can be agnostic. The deck is catered towards software engineering, so if you are going towards coding and programming, this will be perfect. However, basically, this is more of a framework. It can be agnostic to anything, whether it's UX design, project management, so on and so forth. So we'll go ahead and start. Just a disclaimer, this advice is based on anecdotal and personal experiences. You will see, I do have a bit of experience with getting internships, with interviewing as well, but there are a million ways to get your foot in the door and land an internship. The first one is usually almost always the hardest one to get, but you will find a way. There's several ways to go towards it, and this will help you pave your path. The following slides will definitely help you. And when you do know, and when you have your own path, definitely share it with others. It's obviously super competitive, and if you know, it's the first internship is always the hardest one. We'll see some details. So before I even go further, I'll give a little background on myself, some context. As far as a applicant goes, I'm one of the more non-traditional ones, believe it or not. So I come from Queens College, a public CUNY, public school in New York, with a non-traditional major. I'm not a computer science major, I'm an economics major, believe it or not. So I actually had a total of 5 internships prior to getting my full-time position. So I have an experience primarily with mostly all tech, a little bit of product management, a little bit of business strategy. So way back in 2014-ish sort of time, I co-founded a small business. Primarily, it's nothing super thrilling, no groundbreaking technology, but a literal car service, chauffeur service, you can say, with about 15 drivers or so. And it's a small one, but it was the first itch that I've got into understanding technology, because the first time I started, we were looking at building a website and things like this, and I was so ignorant on this whole thing. I didn't even understand how to do all this. So I started looking into it. I found it to be super interesting, and I realized that something I'm more passionate about. Had a growing passion for is UX UI development, front end development, and that sort of engineering. So fast forward a couple years, my first gig was at Memorial Sloan Kettering. I was a systems development intern at a really large cancer organization. Worked on some internal programs over there. Following right after that, I interned over at CNN, primarily working with CNN Business and CNN Money. We worked on transitioning a lot of the media applications that we have that are external, including some of the designs that you see on the website now. So fast forward from there, a little bit of nonprofit work as well. I interned as a software engineering intern for Venture for America, which is a nonprofit based on Andrew Yang, his growth startup nonprofit. And then from there, I had 2 more internships, one more in software engineering in Northwell Health, which is New York's largest healthcare organization. We focused on incubation, primarily a tech incubation center. So we worked with a lot of bleeding edge technologies. We worked with a lot of startup ideas, a lot of ML, and we had really some awesome vendors like Samsung, Google, who would work with us to build some technologies in the healthcare space. From there, I actually pivoted into product management. So it was more on a business strategy role on how to build out these products with the engineers and how to manage that across stakeholders. Ultimately, now I work within the technology realm. I'm in finance. I'm in S&P Global Ratings. I work as a product manager there, and my product is a database. And my team is a strong set of engineers, software engineers, both in New York as well as in Hyderabad, India. So that's a bit about myself. And as you can see, I have a bit of software experience, even though I pivoted out and now I'm more on a architectural or a little higher level as far as getting the software done or software built. But I've definitely went through a lot of the hurdles that one would expect, especially coming from a non-target school, coming from a non-traditional major. So if I can do it, anyone can. So I'm going to start off with the first thing that I think is probably the most important aspect is get yourself involved. Regardless of what you're doing or where your major is, join your local school clubs, remote online volunteering, STEM-based societies, you name it, get yourself involved out there. When I first started, we were doing meetups. I don't know if people even use that anymore, but we had meetup.com and we had we're going through meetups, and I would look at intro to JavaScript or intro to React. And it was way back. I don't even think it was React. It was jQuery or something. Anyway, so I'll go there, but the opportunity was awesome because what it allows you to do is you network with peers who are also looking for that same energy. They want to understand technology. They want to get better in development. They want to, aspire and move into a career in software or tech. So it helps you network. Additionally, this will help you find opportunities to contribute towards. You can find collaborative working. You can find projects that you can work on together. For instance, in Superposition right now, after liftoff, the hackathon, this is a collaborative opportunity, right? This is an excellent opportunity for you guys to take in and be able to put this on a resume, a portfolio, somewhere to show that, hey, I've worked with several folks or had an opportunity to build something. I will go to that. You'll hear that several times. I'll bring it up a couple more times here, but it's vital, especially as a college student when you don't have tons of experience lined up. This is one of the most, like, strong talking point in interviews. And as a tip, I want to mention, if your school doesn't offer any clubs, or if you don't have any clubs, around you, look into remote, groups or online organizations. There's so many co-located organizations now. There's so many global organizations you can join, including this one. Even on Discord, there are channels and things like that. Get yourself involved with people. Just see if you can get yourself in sort of like the tech scene, understand technologies, what's in, what's out, keep yourself involved. So it also helps you building soft skills. I can have a whole deck on just soft skills. I can assure you, whatever position you take in any part of tech, they will ask you the same question they ask everyone else. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? It's important. I swear they don't ask you this just because they want to hear you talk. It's a culture fit, it's a culture feel to understand, because you would be working collaboratively across engineers, sometimes across the globe. And oftentimes you'll be working, whether it's designers, engineers, you name it, it's a co-located, it's a collaborative environment. You need to be able to collaborate, cooperate, coordinate with your peers. So it's really important to have that as well. Gonna move forward. So this one is it's a meaty topic. I have two slides on this. So expanding your domain. So be immersed in your domain. What I mean by this is get involved in the space that you want to learn. You want to be involved in coding? Definitely learn to code, right? Doesn't matter if you want to learn Python or C Sharp, learn to pick up something, start tackling it, take some courses. If you want to get into design, learn design patterns, right? Start looking into documentation, start looking into other designers, understand the way people work, pick up on resources, learn skills. I think that's a vital, super, super important, and definitely like the meaty part of what you want to do. You want to build a career, you need to know what you're doing, right? So, for example, some resources I think that are excellent: Code Academy, Free Code Camp. Some of you probably have already heard of them or used them. They're really good, introductory as well as advanced, as well as being involved in understanding bleeding edge technologies. They're good. If you want to get into UX or UI patterns, UI system designs, Behance, Dribble, you guys probably know more than me on this. And just learn, go into communities, understand how to be involved in design processes. What are the aspects of design? And be good at that. Be familiar with yourself. Additionally, you should always be familiar with the tools of the trade. I think this is like critical. Visual Studio VS Code is just one example. It's just a code editor, or GitHub is just where you store repositories. But these are vital sources. These are vital tools that you would be using in an enterprise environment, whether you're in Google, whether you're in PayPal, you name the firm, they'll probably be using one or the other. They'll be using some level of this, whether it's Azure repositories versus GitHub. But knowing the core fundamentals of this is vital. And if you have already learned it, you have a one up. But this is it's important to know, whether it's VS Code, Notepad++, you name it. Same thing with InVision, Figma, Sketch, any of these sort of design pattern. If you want to get into design, I try to say this is agnostic, so it could be for anything, but these are the ones I know. Like if you're in an enterprise environment, for instance, my organization, we have a license with InVision. So it's nice for someone to know Sketch, but it's even better for them to know InVision. But if they know Sketch, we still take them and look, okay, you can adapt the skills to be, good with our licensed product. So it's always good to know one set of that domain. And from there, you can be like, okay, well, I may not know how to use I may not know this sort of coding language, or I may not know this application, but I'm probably safe to say I can learn it. And that's important. Being, especially as in an internship opportunity, that's what most interviewers, most your managers when you're interning, that's what they want to see, right? Like, hey, this person has potential to grow and take on different challenges. Last but not least, I think there are resources out here that you can always take a look at and be able to grow with. EDX is one. Coursera. These are just, you can get certificates, you can learn about pretty much anything, right? So if you've already been doing this, excellent. If you haven't approached them, take a look into these resources, take classes. They're like small courses, sometimes they're bite-sized, sometimes they're very large learning paths, but they'll give you a fundamental understanding of some technology or whatever you really want to get yourself involved to, whatever application or software you want to get involved to with, they're good resources. Same with the Grow with Google program. I believe it's Google's Grow now, whatever it is called. These sort of things, they apply certificates. Udacity too. They have like nano degrees. It's like an equivalent of certificates. These things are, I mean, it's nice to have a piece of paper, but it's also important to learn the material, and that piece of paper can always help you at least say like, okay, I completed a course from end to end, and it's a resume booster. Even today, I still complete courses across these, even while with no, like with no intent of getting an internship or another job. It's just the fact that you're continuously growing, continuously learning. It's important. So one way I've faced some questions like this before. Where do I start? Where do I learn? Or like, how do I approach what I want to know? Depending on the internship or what you want to, what you want to take on, look at the previous internships job postings. Sometimes you'll see like it has different variables or different flavors, but they're all essentially the same thing. You go into a software engineering internship, you'll say it'll be some flavor of software, development lifecycle, or using some level of code or some level of understanding how to deploy things. You look through the previous job postings. Chances are that's what that's what they are looking for, and you can take that as almost like a checklist for your skills. So that's one pointer I would absolutely say is pretty vital. I've used it myself when I wanted to apply to, let's say, a company and I wanted to do like front-end development. I want to know what technologies they use. So it's good for me to look at their previous, internship positions and things like that, just to get some idea. You can always Google them. You can always find them. And, as you guys know, they're almost seasonal sometimes, right? They come like semester-wise. Just look for the ones from the previous semesters or the previous years. You can even I've done this. I don't, if you want to do it, you always can. You can always reach out to people on LinkedIn, find people in your community, be like, okay, hey, what do you guys, what stack do you use or what do you guys use? Sometimes they'll tell you, and it's a good advantage for you to know. Any questions so far? Feel free to unmute and just, okay,
Vanessa has a question that she
sure,
DM'd me. It
sure.
says, what advice do you have on uploading an old project like one on Unity to GitHub, particularly if that project contains many different scripts?
What advice? I'm not sure what you mean by like the intricacies of uploading the entire, I guess, the code to GitHub. However, as long as it's open source or it doesn't have any licensed information, which sometimes depending on what you do can, it's okay. I don't think there's any, issue with uploading any sort of file like this. As long as you just show what you use, the stack you're using, even if it's not a complete project, if it's half the work and you're working on it, it's still good to just upload it. I think that your GitHub should be kind of a breathing document of some of the work you do. And sometimes you'll see a bunch of projects that are not completed. Sometimes you'll see them, just they're super prototypes. They're very, very basic, but I think they tell a story. So my advice, I'm not sure if this answers your question, is regardless of whatever technology or stack you use, put it out there. Would that answer your question?
Vanessa has a hand up, so I'm gonna pass it on to her.
Sure.
Yeah, so just as a follow-up, I know like my scripts, for example, it is a completed project, but it runs in concurrence with like the actual game engine, right? So I was just wondering, like, is it valid to upload it to GitHub when it won't run? You know what I mean? Like without like the actual platform behind it, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, totally. So yes, at the end of the day, they may not have the engine to run to play this right off the bat from GitHub, but it's totally okay to upload them. Sometimes you'll be uploading. I mean, you can be having your code hold so many libraries, and the chances are the interviewer or the engineering team that's looking at your work, they'll be able to understand through your code what you're doing. They're not there to test everything out end to end, see full deployments of your work. I'll be honest with you, when you're competing with a bunch of applicants, they're going to go through a high level visual through your portfolio. If they find it interesting, they'll definitely play around with it and see what they can do with it. But by all means, there's no harm in putting it out there, whether they can run it or not. Put it out there as long as you have something working and you know it's working. It's, if anything, what it can lead you to do is have a conversation. If suppose you do get an interview, you can at least bring it up as a conversation, or they can bring it up, say, hey, can you demonstrate this or can you show this to us? It's happened many times. So that's another opportunity for you to at least just showcase that you have the potential to be able to do something. Whether it runs in front of them is a whole different story, but it'll give them the opportunity to ask that question to you. So I think it's still valuable to answer your question. Does that help?
Awesome, thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
We have another question from Lynn. Lynn asks, how did you study these LeetCode problems to pass the technical interview?
Wow, that's a good question. Okay, so I didn't even get to lead code yet, but yeah. So um, hmm, That's a good question. So my personal experience is mostly all LeetCode easy, HackerRank, Code Wars easy problems. I've done a little bit of Medium. Most of the interviews that I've gotten, at least the ones I've gotten from like Facebook, these are, I mean, I wasn't able to pass because they're quite difficult. So if you are at a position where you would be able to take LeetCode Medium problems and be able to do certain problems in that realm, I think you're in excellent shape. For me, coming in a non-traditional background, it's a lot of learning, a lot of open source. I've actually, what I used to do was I would go on YouTube and see other people solve problems. I don't know if that's like a, what typically people do, but for me, that was really helpful to understand. It would just teach me strategies. And also when I use Code Wars, particularly, I liked using that domain, that website, and that particularly because I can like really see the answers of others. And it's like, people contribute to finding better ways to answer something. And I would just kind of try to replicate them. After a while, you realize that all of them kind of have a fundamental pattern. And once you try to catch that pattern and you get good at it, you can kind of do it on your own. So those are like my techniques that I've used. Um, Believe it or not, the answering of the LeetCode problems or HackerRank problems is not like the end all be all. How you get there, whiteboarding the problem itself is just as important. And I was going to get into more detail of that later if you want to hold on to that question and you can ask again. Is that fair? I think I have a slide on that one as well. Cool. I'm going to move. Okay.
That's good.
Okay, so I'll continue on for expanding your domain. Okay, continue learning, involve yourself in projects and activities. Being a part of SuperPOSITRON is an awesome thing. You guys are already doing that, right? Just stay involved, stick to it. Just keep yourself involved in communities. I cannot stress that enough. Just like be involved in it. The more you are, the more visibility you get. Forget just getting an internship. It'll give you full-time roles. You'll get offers across the more people you're involved with and the more networking you can do with that. Open source contribution is always important. If you don't have a project, end-to-end project, or you don't have a hackathon driven, some sort of end-to-end project, contribute to open source. That's just as fine. Volunteer. If you can't even do that, then volunteer. It's also okay. I've done all of this considering my background. I didn't have any sort of stepping stone. I even volunteered like years ago. I was at New York Cares volunteering, just like teaching people how to use certain applications. They're simple, it's fulfilling, but it shows that you're just not a code monkey. So sometimes that's actually really helpful when an interviewer is looking at you and they're looking at 500 different applicants. They've seen somebody stick all the keywords on the top of a resume a bunch of times. So they just try to see something that stands out. It's important to have some of that as well. Give recommendations from peers and colleagues, build a relationship. I cannot stress this. You guys all know it's not always about what you know, it's who you know. Okay. So keep that and keep that momentum, always network. All right. And just keep that energy for everything. Build a relationship. So this is for those who are talking primarily for the like answering algorithmic problems and these codes. So understand data structure and algorithms enough to explain to your mom or maybe another student. Just make it simple. Understand and be able to whiteboard these scenarios. LeetCode, HackerRank, CodeWars, contribute to open source, and complete at least one project end to end. That is at least what I believe to get a solid internship. You should at least do, I would say, probably 3 or 4 of all of these at a bare minimum. The more you do any of this, keep it focused, just keep practicing on them. You may not be able to solve, I mean, it sounds like some of you are very advanced. So in that case, just keep just running through them and just look at, just contribute, keep looking at answers, keep understanding it. This is really just you testing your skill. I cannot give you particular advice on how to build your skill set on algorithmic, challenges like this, but it's just keep at it, understand solutions, look at how you can, just go through tutorials, try to understand as much as you can from others. I use Reddit a lot, so you can always check Reddit as well. Look into all of that, and then just keep pushing on it. If you're already doing LeetCode problems, you're at a very good shape. Just keep continuing. Majority of your interviewers, yes, they're probably going to be like, hey, show me this, they're going to give you a LeetCode medium problem, answer this. It's good for you to answer it, and it's bonus points if you get it fully correct, which is awesome because your competitors are probably doing the same. But practice whiteboarding. When you have an interview, they're not looking at just you being able to code through, believe it or not. They want a full engineer that knows how to talk to stakeholders, knows how to talk to a team, handle agile methodologies, all of this that they don't really teach you in a code, in LeetCode. Okay. So I'm going to move forward. Wait, before I even do that, does anyone have any other questions? I'll try to answer them as much as I can. Okay, I'm going to move. So brand yourself. Listen, build a resume that focuses on all you can offer for a role. If you've done extracurricular projects, you did hackathons for SuperPOSITRON, you did hackathons for Hack and Y, whatever, put it up there. You just have a really good GPA, add it. School projects, add them. Even if they're a to-do list, add them. Member of any clubs, add it. Taking any certificates or courses, Databricks, whatever, add it. Just put them all there. Make a whole portfolio based on what you know and what you have. And especially in the positions that we're in, and, looking as an intern or looking to grow into an intern to hopefully a full-time offer, you just want to show that you have an artillery of stuff and you have an initiative to actually learn this, because a lot of this will separate you from the rest. Just have it all around, okay? It's one thing to be able to kill the technical interviews, but just make sure that you also are a well-rounded applicant. It matters, and particularly if you're going for big end roles, you're taking a FANG, interviews at FANG. Interns are not meant to be experts in their field. Any of the internships I've had, the expectations, I've interviewed at quite a few. I've done interviewing for interns, and I've interviewed full-time as well. Interns particularly, you're not expected to know everything that you get sent. Whatever's on the job description, you're not expected to. That's a wish list. And in reality, as long as you have the ability to understand that you can continuously grow and learn, that's what we look for. We want to be able to know somebody who is, okay, they don't know this domain, but they can probably adapt to this domain rather quickly, especially nowadays where majority of the organizations are in agile. They expect you to be able to pivot quickly, be able to build MVPs quickly, be able to deliver value very quickly. And that sort of thing just requires you to just be continuously adapting and learning. So yes, everything you've done, the technical interviews and those stuff will help you. They'll be able to teach you how to just, be able to solve problems out of the box and just be strategic about it. But as an intern, your expectation is to make sure that you can grow. And that's what they want to see. Majority of these internships, as you know, typically will come back with a full-time offer. And at least that's almost sometimes the intent, is that they look at it as a way to field you in for a full-time role. It's in-house. It's a lot cheaper to take you in-house. So with that being said, just be an all-rounded applicant, show and understand your expectations. You are there to grow and learn, and you can ask questions. As an intern, when I first started, I thought it was like a big deal for me to ask a bunch of questions and like bother my lead engineers on simple things, because I was like, oh, I don't know how to, just hit this API or whatever. And I wasn't able to properly do it. And I would stop myself. Ask questions. You can totally ask them. That's literally what you're meant to do. So understand your expectations and show that you're continuously learning. When they see that you're driven and you have hunger, it will absolutely show. It will make you look really good. I want to continue on this because to get an internship, regardless of where you are, I think these are really important. Okay. Expand on your resume. I mean, if you guys have 2-page resumes at this point, you might want to shorten that. But in general, what you want to do is hit the targets all on your resume, all the talking points, like the synopses of what value provided for each, experience that you have on your resume. But expand on that in LinkedIn. Take the opportunity. If you have not signed up for LinkedIn, sign up for LinkedIn. Build a career profile. It is as of nowadays definitely one of the most active recruiting tools recruiters, hiring managers use. So you'll see that it's very evident, and having an expansion on like expanding your profile on all of these things that you do. For instance, for all of like my internships, I cannot fit all of this information into a resume, a page or two. It'll be several pages. So what I do on LinkedIn is I expand on this. I talk about the technologies I've used, the skills that I've learned from it, what I've actually built, right? Like sometimes a recruiter may not even know some of the stuff that you're talking about. Even if it's a technical recruiter, it may just go right over their heads because they're seeing so many applications. What you want to show is, okay, this is what value I brought, or this is what I built, and I built it from end to end, and I was able to use these technologies. If you can hit the target across that for all of these, your experiences, I think that's super vital. We like to look at that. Hiring managers like to look at that. I think that's important. Publish articles and small research. By all means, when I say this, I don't mean like, if you're doing publications and research, kudos to you, excellent. But just go out there, contribute to contribute, talk about things that you've done or your experiences. You built through a hackathon, you built a project, write it on LinkedIn. I built a parking app. Put it on LinkedIn. Hey, I did this, this, and this. These are the functionalities of it. I used this. This is the stack that I've used to build it. And then put an article on it really quick. It's just good. It makes it increases your publicity. You can share it on LinkedIn. You can write a blog post on it. Dedicate yourself to it. It just makes you like a well-rounded applicant. Be articulate. It's good. Be active on social media. Work for a cause that matters. So like be active. Just whether it's on Instagram, wherever. Just show that you have a drive for it. Of course, partition yourself from having a personal IG, business IG. But in general, what I mean is work towards driving that visibility that, hey, I have a profile, like I have a profile, I know how to build these, this is where I'm immersed myself into. I'm involved in these hackathons, I'm involved in these causes. This sort of stuff makes you a well-rounded applicant. Have a personal blog. I cannot stress that enough. I had a small portfolio. I just had a personal blog. I just literally just put like my work experience. Here's my resume. Here's, like some testimonial or recommendation and a contact. It's something simple as that, and just keep building on it. It doesn't have to be the most amazing thing. It's just somebody wants to see that you're passionate about it. I think that's really important as well. So the takeaway I expect it really is that make your academic career tell a story that leads to your career. Majority of the leaders that you see on LinkedIn, or at least the ones I've seen, you can tell that there's a story in them, whether they move from, they started off as a software engineer into lead, principal engineer, CTO. They have a story that tells, and they don't go around talking, I did this, this, and this, or I provided this with these stack softwares. They talk about the value they provided. And it's always good to bring the stack and whatever, whatever technologies you used, but show that you made a value. Hey, I redirected people from CNN money to CNN business, traffic, load testing, performance testing for tens of millions of visitors on a daily basis. That resonates with an interviewer, that resonates with your hiring manager. So this sort of work is important. Even if you're helping 5 people and it's not tens of millions, you're providing value to 5 people, that's still really important. As an intern, you're not expected to really show any value like that. So doing that is absolutely makes you stand apart from the rest. And on a high level, at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. Build a strong resume and get it reviewed. You can always write a cover letter, right? Write a little cover letter, just do some bullet points on the things that you provided, the values that you've done, projects you worked on. Apply early and apply often. I cannot tell you how many I've applied to, definitely over 100 positions, internships, definitely throughout my course. Don't sit and ponder on an opportunity. Yes, it may not be the industry you want to be in. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not FANG, but just shoot your shot. Apply. Eventually, trust me, it may not be the first internship or the second or third. You're going to get to the company you want to. Just apply early and apply often. One trick I personally use, and I hope, I assume many users use this as well, is sort things by date posted. A recruiter, especially when I just looked like maybe 2 days ago, on an application for a front-end engineer has over 400 applications, 400 submissions, applicants for it. Do you really think a recruiter is going to go through 400 applications? Probably not. First of all, they're going to have some sort of software that systematically just, deducts or takes away, or, based on keywords, filter through your resume. But beyond this, they're going to just check. They're not going to check through all of them, right? So apply early, get your slot in there, keep applying, and you'll see that, like, usually the ones, at least my personal experience, the more I applied to places early, the responses I got. So that's one advice I would say. And don't get discouraged when you get rejections hit. I have a whole subfolder in my inbox with just rejections. It's kind of like almost petty, but nonetheless, it's okay, totally okay to get rejections. It's a fact of life. You only need one win. If you can get one, the first internship, as I said, is the hardest one. If you can get that second, third, fourth, it'll be a lot easier. And by the time you finish, you probably have 5. So get your resume reviewed by peers or professionals. I wanted to mention that tip as well. Look to add value, not just stacks. I feel like oftentimes when I look at, when we look at, my firm looks at certain positions, we look through resumes and they come in, and it's awesome to see some brilliant people, but they will go straight to the code. They'll go straight to, I did, this technology is what, it's so deep. They take deep dives into technologies. It's awesome. It's good, but it's not always what we want to do, especially in an agile environment, especially environments in large corporations, right? They want to see see that you can provide potential value. At the end of the day, business is what, the business determines your need as an engineer. So if you can provide value, your skill sets will be there. As long as you keep practicing technical interviews, practice coding, whatever you want to do, keep practicing that. As long as you provide value, you'll be in good shape. Any questions on this?
No questions in the chat yet.
Alrighty, awesome. All right, so interviews. I thought this was cute. So for interviews, typically, as you guys know, they last a couple rounds, right? They'll be behavioral. You'll usually get a recruiter, or some technical recruiter, or one of the hiring managers contact you, get a field of you, right? So like, explain a time you did this, or explain a time when you had to work with, a large group, or deliver something under pressure, under like a short time. Or what are your biggest strengths, weaknesses? As I said, these soft skills, they're pretty important. in when you're determining an applicant, especially when you're going to have an applicant join a team, a large distributed team, for instance, like Google search team or something, very large team, you're working with several engineers, you're working with several domains, you want to be able to crush that behavioral interview. I think majority of you should be okay with that, but this is just something like I don't really know how one can train for behavioral interviews. Personally, for me, I was just honest. Typically, when I would say like weaknesses, I would just say like, sometimes I would get overfull, like I would take deep dives into some things without realizing it's way too deep. Maybe I need to take a step back and I don't need to look that deep. I would just wing it, to be honest. But just be yourself, be candid. You don't want to sound like a code monkey or a robot. Be human. Technical assessments, either you get a take-home challenge, which I've seen quite often, or a coding challenge right on the, like if you're interviewing face-to-face or through a video call. I mean, that's just a fact of the matter. You're going to have to take it. Sometimes sometimes some of the interview questions will be so difficult, or sometimes they will just feel like, why am I even doing this? Sometimes they're not even meant to be with an answer. You're not meant to find an answer. The purpose is how you solve that problem. So whiteboarding it, explaining thoroughly to to the interviewer, I'm doing it this way, or I think this would be the right decision. Getting feedback while you're having that, whiteboard, while you're whiteboarding, ask them the questions, kind of field out the, field if I'm going in the right direction or the wrong direction. Interviewers will typically help you. I've had these scenarios happen, and I've never had an interviewer tell me like, oh, figure it out. They'll always try to guide me a little bit. They'll always be like, oh no, that's probably the right direction. So they'll guide you. Work with the interviewer, understand if you're making the right choice. If you're not, backtrack, work with them. They're trying to help you as well. And yeah, just understand additional system design questions as well. These are things that you can probably study for, search them up on Google, just try to understand them, be able to explain them back. And I think that's also important. Culture fit and feel, it encompasses behavioral and technical assessments. Just, different firms, different companies have different cultures. See if you're the right fit for it. If you want to be in a financial firm, it's very different from being in, let's say, big media. Very different, complete different cultures. So understand what the culture is like, and do not forget to ask questions. Do your research on a company. It's happened where people come in and they will just ask us like a super general question, but then every once in a while someone will come in and be like, oh, I heard that you guys are merging with this company, or you're looking to add this feature onto, let's say, this application. Ask them these questions. It will literally, like, it will stop, the interview will remember you. They're like, okay, wow, that's a pretty good question. We've had somebody at once in our firm ask a question about like a merger, which was so cool. Like we didn't even know they would research into that. So I'm like, oh wow, so you actually understand like our business, and it's something that leaves a lasting impression. So ask questions, do your research, and ask questions as if you're looking to stick around and grow. It's not like, hey, I'm just here, for a 3-month stint and I'm going to jump off to the next opportunity. Ask the question with the intent that, hey, like I actually want to be back here and I want to grow with you guys. Whether you grow in 3 months time, that's undetermined, but you want to ask that with the intent that, hey, I want to stick around. I want to know like how your culture is, how I can actually be better here. And that's also pretty important. Any questions on the interview portion? I know these are all really high level. I'm just trying to make sure that I capture all ranges of experience here. Any questions?
No questions in the chat for now.
Awesome. So that kind of closes off what I have here. If you obviously want to keep in touch, feel free to do so. And if you have any questions, now's the time. Additionally, if you have any questions afterwards, if you're looking for particular advice on like, hey, I've done this much on this, I had this chances, what can I do to get this interview? Reach out to me on Discord, reach out to me on LinkedIn. This is a really high level overview, but I'm happy to go into advanced details on like particularly how you want to build certain parts of your resume, how you want to build certain parts of your, whether it's your GitHub portfolio, whichever, on how you want to get that better. I can help. I'm happy to help. Okay. If no questions, I will leave it to you, Nikita. But
Yeah, we can wait a few minutes if anyone has
sure.
any questions. Steph said, I would be so thankful to reach out. I'm having such a hard time with interviews. If you want, you can stop sharing slides so you can see.
Sure. Okay. I unfortunately can't see the chat box. I'm sorry, I'm a little inexperienced with Zoom, but feel free to let me know if there's any questions, or just unmute and just, raise your hand. I'm more than happy to answer.
So people are saying thank you, and Tulu is asking where we can find tech internship opportunities.
Tech internship opportunities. Okay, so if you're looking for internships, personally, I've had the best luck with LinkedIn. I've always been able to get internships through LinkedIn. I know others use things like Indeed, or they'll just look through Google Jobs. I've noticed people just because it just sources from a bunch of different places and it puts it into a compilation of different places. So you can try that as well. Try Google, but I would say LinkedIn is the best, primarily because once you build a portfolio, once you build your LinkedIn, a recruiter will typically look through the job post, look at the application right on LinkedIn, and be able to actually go into your profile, understand the bigger picture of what you do and the things you've done. It's a lot easier than like looking at a one pager. So I've noticed from my experience, we would like to look at that typically first, just to like, okay, what is this? What is this applicant about? But yeah, my personal, I think I'm maybe a little biased, but my personal best bet is through LinkedIn.
Feel free to type your question in the chat or unmute or raise your hand, anything that works. Okay, well, if you have any, Cynthia is asking, high school students are usually unable to make a stable or impressive LinkedIn profile. Are there any recommendations for those circumstances?
Yes. Okay. So totally right. I've always thought about this, like, as a high schooler, how do I get myself, build a strong portfolio? We always get this, like, I guess this impression that when you're on LinkedIn, you have to show a bunch of careers. If you look at mine, and my LinkedIn's on the deck, and I'm happy to share it. I have things from like working as a sales associate. I have a whole story from my LinkedIn from like the beginning to the end. It's not like some of the stuff doesn't even apply, but I've had people like look through and they actually go through all of my resume to see what I've done before. What I would suggest is, if you're not, in a position where you do not have a lot of career experiences and you're in high school still, show things like hackathons, show things like these activities that you're taking on, take part of social groups, whatever they are, put them in there and just build up, expand on it. If you were, like, bring up roles and responsibilities, take leadership positions. Leadership positions are awesome. Try to be involved in leadership positions in any opportunity. Volunteer for places and say that you've done certain things, you provided value to people. Put that out there in your resume, even if it's not a career item. If you've wrote a research paper, or you've been a part of a club and you organize these events and you help these certain people, and it's in the tech domain, put it out there. At the end of the day, if you're in high school and you're doing this, you have a great advantage. If I were you, like, if I were to go back, I would absolutely take that opportunity. But you're doing a great job if you're in high school already. Just put yourself in these organizations and then bring it up on LinkedIn, bring it up in your resume. I've coordinated with a team of 8 engineers or 8 students, whichever, to build out the front end of this application. Even if it is literally like if it looks even to you terrible, it's fine. The fact that you actually tried and built it out, it says a lot. So I would say, take whatever you have, expand on that information, try to build it. Of course, do not fabricate anything. In general, just try to just be honest, be transparent about the value that you did. Okay.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. And Tula is also asking, what programming languages are common in tech internship programs?
Oh, totally depends. So it totally depends on the art organization. Nowadays, since most companies, I mean, if you're applying for a large one, if it's startups, it's generally kind of straightforward. They'll tell you in the application what, like software or what technologies they use. But if it's a larger organization, chances are they're using multiple stacks. Any place that I've interned at or worked at so far, we've used a plethora of languages depending on the need. So it's it's kind of hard to answer, but generally, if you know something like Python, or a front end language, that you're in certain domain, that's fine. You can adapt to the rest. Majority of the folks sometimes, like, when we hire in our firm, we like to see someone with a C# background or Java background, because it applies more towards our products. But that doesn't mean that we want to hire somebody who does not know either of those, or is a Python expert, or is a front end expert. They will find a need in a larger organization, especially like if you're applying for FANG or you're going to like Facebook, right? They'll get you in as an intern and then they'll group you afterwards, depending on your skill set or where you match. So you don't necessarily need to worry about what exact technology, but just get good at one technology or within a domain, and just make sure that you're good at that. If you can present or be confident about it, show some work that you've done with it, that says enough.
Awesome. Also, could you describe a typical day in a tech intern's life?
Yeah. Okay. So let me try to remember this. Oh, yes. So when I was a CNN, I think this is a more active one because I think they're pretty fast paced, which is if you guys are into fast paced environments, media is the way to go, I think. Um, Usually what we would do is go in there, check emails. Um, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not as exciting as you guys think, but it's check emails, run through a daily stand up. It's you go through the team, talk about the updates that you provide. Even as an intern, they sometimes they expect you to go into a daily scrum or a daily stand up, which is just basically like a group where you're with your team and you're either speaking to the engineering manager or you're speaking to the product manager or someone, and they'll be like, okay, so what am I going to do today? This is what I'm going to finish today. This is what I'm blocked on. This is the sort of work I need more help with, and it just kind of gives it's like a summary of my day's events sort of thing. So we go through that. It's typically 15 to a half hour, and then you complete the task that you need to do. If a bug comes in, it depends on the priority of the bug. We'll take care of a ticket. Interns are typically, I mean, internships, it's good for us to look at sometimes tickets because it helps us adapt to certain problems, and they come in, sometimes they'll be high priority problems that you'll need to, figure out rather quickly. It's a good opportunity for you to have your engineer. Usually you have like a mentor that you'll be like your engineering lead or something. They'll be there with you. They'll kind of like guide you to it. It's a very practical scenario. But you'll see it's often large organizations, they'll deal with problems that are like, I mean, they're like just they're problems and you'll just have to solve them. They're not bleeding edge like, oh, I'm going to build out a software. When I realized when we were, as an intern or even as just like before interning, I was focused on building things like I'm going to build this and it's awesome to do that. But when you go into a organization, you're not necessarily going to be there building from scratch. You have a whole team of engineers, multiple teams of engineers working on a product, all different parts of the product, all different parts of like even whether it's the design from the back end, whether it's calling something on the front end, everything that is taking, all of that is just different parts. So you're just helping one small part of it and making sure it works seamlessly. So tickets, typically I answered if I had to. And then there were usually like a project, for instance, I would have to work since I was on front end. Mine would be rebuilding the navigation bar. So they were switching over the components. They were moving from like, I think it was jQuery, I believe, or just like raw JavaScript to like React components. So we were just basically doing a transition. So I was working mostly independently on building that, then having my engineering lead at the end of the day review it, see if everything's good. Usually once a week, I'll meet with the manager of the team. They'll give me some advice, what I can do to grow, get some pulse check, some feedback. And you usually want to take that. That's a good opportunity. It's almost like intentional for you to actually talk to them, network with them, ask them about their life. So like this is a good opportunity for you to connect with them as well. So typical day is like this. We follow some sort of agenda, meetings, stuff like that. Typically, yes, you do have to attend some meetings. As an intern, you may not necessarily need to attend them. It's good to attend them. So I just jump into a meeting. They talk about long-term strategy and growth on certain things, and a lot of it will go right over my head, but it's always nice to be involved in it. So that would also be there. But yeah, mostly just answering things and just working on one project. I've noticed internships usually tell you to work on a project. It's a lot easier. They'll be like, oh, for this, next 3 months, I want you to work on this, instead of just being like, hey, take something on as like a real, like a full-time role.
Awesome. And Steph is asking, I've seen some internship ask for 1 to 2 years of experience or list a huge tech stack. Is this normal? I feel a big sense of imposter syndrome when reading internship job posts.
Yeah, it's normal and it's unfortunate. The reality is that it's not, as I said earlier, a job application posting they're like wish lists. A perfect candidate will have all of those items, all of the check marks and checklists, but I can assure you it's very rare to find a perfect candidate that has everything. It's a wish list, and the more you can fulfill a lot of that wish list, that's fine. And to answer the part of imposter syndrome, it's normal. Even our senior engineers, people who've been here for decades, will still feel imposter syndrome at times. It's totally normal. It's just the nature of the beast. Especially when you're working with, problem solvers or technical folks that are able to deep dive into certain domains, it just goes way too advanced. You will definitely feel like, oh, what am I doing? Am I doing something right or wrong? That whole, imposter syndrome is real, but it's normal and it's okay. Just know that you're there. They chose you. They went through all these applicants. They made sure that you're part of that team, and they took the chance on you. So don't go in there thinking that you have to build something amazing or you have some expectations. Manage that expectation. You're there to learn and grow. They know that too. For the job postings, just to circle back, apply. It never hurts to apply. Even if you feel like you're like, oh, I only have 50% of the skills, apply. It's okay. Just shoot your shot. It's a numbers game at the end of the day. You'll be surprised how many of the applications that your competition doesn't even have half those skills either. You'll be surprised. So just keep applying and don't be afraid of it. Worst case scenario, they'll be in there and they'll ask you, and you'll be like, oh, I don't know it, but I'm willing to learn it. Or just say like, oh, I don't know this exactly, but I know that, and you can always find a way to answer it through.
Yeah, as a side note, last year when I saw SuperPOSITRON Toronto hiring, like I was like, okay, I'm never gonna get director position, but I applied and I became the director of operations, and this year I'm the senior director of content creation. So
Yeah,
it really
awesome.
never hurts to apply. The worst response you can get is being rejected, but if you don't apply, you're still rejected. So just
Yeah,
apply.
yeah, shoot your
Zara,
shot.
yeah, Zara is asking a question. As someone with a tech background, how best do you think one can study programming? Is it by working on projects or watching videos?
Oh man, depends on the way you learn. I would always suggest be on the field, work on projects. If they're not beautiful projects, that's okay. If it's not a work of art, your code is not work, that's okay. Work on the project. Watching videos is good to understand background and context. Or if you need to solve a problem, like I don't know, I think I'm trying to remember. Like fun function or something. I guess these are like those YouTubers or that like will solve problems with you. It's nice, like it'll teach you how to tackle problems, but you also want to be able to do it on your own as well. I think there was one resource I thought that was pretty good. I think it was like Clever Programming or Clever Programmer. I forgot. It's been a little while, but they would do like full on live streams. It's like an hour and a half long of like building a whole like Amazon, like Amazon clone or something. It's cool to watch them. It teaches you how to actually start and end a project, which is very important. um, but working on it is just as important, I would say. When you're in the real, like when you're in an actual role, sometimes you're not going to have a project complete in the time that you're an intern. A project sometimes comes in from an organization that's months long, could be 6 months, a year. You're not going to be able to see the completion of that project sometimes. And if you do, that's awesome. Then watch these videos, learn. I would always suggest getting yourself into the code and just trying to be able to build something, even if it's a prototype, even if it's like, oh, I just know I got the front end to be, design, or I got the back end to make the call and, get a response. It's still okay. I would say code first. Watch the videos if you're stuck on stuff or you need influence. I usually look at it for motivation for me personally, but yeah, I would say do both.
And another question from Tulu: Would there be training once you get into a tech internship program to orientate
Yes.
you?
Yeah. So yeah, so for the ones that I've been in, besides my last internship, which was the software engineering to product management one, which was more on the hit the ground running sort of thing. It primarily, yes, they give you a little bit of like idea of like, hey, what do you know? What are you good at? This is what I would teach you. They don't necessarily go through like a 3-day training course for you, though I think some programs do. I may have seen like something from Squarespace or something. Don't hold me on it, but I've seen programs where they actually like get you through like a 3-day workshop or something like that. But generally speaking, no, they'll basically, the interview determines, like whether you have the skill set or potential skill set to take the role. So once you're in there, they'll just kind of be like, oh, this is what you want to work. This is what you're going to work on. Are you good at this? Or this is what the stack we're going to look at. Spend some time learning it. And like I said, their expectation is not for you to deliver immediately, though if you do, awesome. But the expectation is never that. It's for you to be able to adapt, be involved in an environment, even if you're a full-time role, right? Forget internships. You come in as a real, like, full-time position, they don't expect you to hit the ground running. You have to understand the stack. You have to understand what the deployment schedules are, how does one deploy, code reviews, all of that. Like there's a whole process. So it's the logistics of it is also like something that takes a little bit of training and time. So you will get kind of you won't necessarily get a workshop or anything to go through with it, but they expect that you will ask questions and be like, hey, what do I do now? Or how do I do this? They know.
I think that's all for questions. If you guys
Okay.
have any further questions after this workshop. Oh, Zara has another question. Do you know any site that explains data structures and algorithm really well?
Good question. I uh ping me after. Believe I have some resources. I think it was on Reddit is where I got them. I also have a book. I think it's summer stuff somewhere. It's been a little while since I opened it. But if you're into the reading, then that would be one. And I think there's some Reddit resources that I've looked at that would help, primarily for resource and compilation of like, there's even repositories that go through a lot of these stuff that people just contribute to, and they add these huge README files. There's some of those all through Reddit, and I believe I've checked it through there. So shoot me a ping or message, and I'll try to get that out. It's somewhere on my bookmarks. But there should be some resources there. I can't name off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Yeah, you can find Fahad's contact information in our Hapats on Discord. So if you have any questions after this workshop, you can definitely contact him or contact any of our other workshop leads. I don't really see any more questions now. So thank you so much for coming. What is the Hackathon Discord? I'll have someone send you over a link later, Sharon. And so, yeah, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for speaking with us, and have a
Yeah.
good night if you're in the Eastern time zone.
Thank you. I am, and you guys as well. Thank you all for the awesome questions, and thanks, Nikita. Thanks for doing this. All right, awesome, guys.